Give everyone a few moments here.
Blue screen.
All right, everyone, welcome to Preview Week for Willamette, the Pinot Noir auction. The wines featured in this tasting series are small lot bottlings for our exclusive trade auction. Contact Emily at the WVWA if you don't know about the auction and you'd like to learn more. I'll put her email address in the chat. For this year's auction, we're pleased to announce a charitable partnership with the James Beard Foundation's Food and Beverage Investment Fund for Black and Indigenous Americans as a part of their Open for Good campaign. All funds raised on auction lots beyond the opening bids, as well as through the Paddle Race Pledge, will go to the investment fund. I'll put their website in the chat as well. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of our auction sponsors for their ongoing support. And now I'd like to introduce today's featured panelists representing Lot 87, Rich Martinoff of Joel Gott Wines.
Hello, everyone.
Representing Lot 90, Scott Neal of Coeur de Terre Vineyard.
Good morning.
Representing Lot 91, Tony Rynders of Tendril Wine Company. Representing Lot 92, Shane Moore of Zena Crown.
Hello.
And now I'll kick it off to our host, Rob Alstrin of Adelsheim. Rob, they're all yours.
Thanks, Julia. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, and I appreciate this panel. We are going to have a lot of fun today. Some good friends here, some co-workers, so I'm looking forward to hearing about their wines and their stories behind them. I am coming to you from Flagstaff, Arizona, of all places, so if it's a little noisy in the background, I apologize. My son is up here at college, so it is also the home of a lot of Indigenous people, and I'm really excited about the James Beard Foundation charitable portion of this, benefiting Black and Indigenous restaurant and beverage people. So I think it's a great addition to our auction, and albeit a strange year, I think it'll be a lot of fun, and this is a good learning curve for all of us who've been doing Zoom for a bit. So welcome, everyone. What I wanted to do first off is maybe touch on the 18 vintage, because that's what the auction is about this year. And then after that, we'll go winemaker by winemaker to talk about their individual auction lots. So Rich from Joel Gott, you want to talk a little bit about the 2018 vintage and your thoughts of this year?
Yeah, 2018 was a very good vintage in my opinion. It's showing well right now, and it will continue to show well through the years. You know, up in Oregon, the romantic and fun part of it is it's truly different every year, the vintage from year to year. And as winemakers, we need to adjust accordingly. 2018, the weather cooperated, so you know, we didn't get our fall monsoon, which we get sometime, and we had a nice kind of extended growing season that wasn't too hot, that allowed for, you know, optimal hang time. So we basically were able to kind of dictate the way the wines were, as far as being able to let them hang to get full flavors and ripeness instead of having to, you know, battle the weather. We did have a little bit of weather, but nothing that would hinder our operation. So I think the wines are showing beautifully and will continue to show beautifully. Like I said, the thing about Oregon though, and some of my favorite vintages and the romantic aspect are like the 2007, 2011 vintages. And those have wines in them, which I call like a want ad wine. So when you finish the last bottle coming off of the bottling line, you go check the want ads, because what you're tasting is, you know, it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. And then in 5 years or 2 or 3 years, it turns out to be your best vintage ever. So that's what I love about Oregon. And like I said, 2018 is a strong candidate that was really nice to work with for, you know, on a winemaking side.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think some people, you know, it sometimes said, you know, the vintage variation in Oregon is a problem. It's a bad thing.
No.
You know, Scott, what's your take on that? You know, as a winemaker and consumer?
Yeah, so I think it's actually one of the great things we have in Oregon is the fact that I always say wines about Oregon are about time and place, that they come from somewhere and they come from a time, and that every year there's something special and unique and different about it. And I love that. You know, over the last few vintages, we've had some nice, ripe, warm weather, but that hasn't always been the case. 19 a little cooler than 18, I would say. But 18 was clearly that kind of easy vintage, frankly. You know, there were certainly some things. We had a little bit of a late fruit set, or bud break at our vineyard, actually. We're in the McMinnville AVA, so we're a little further west, which always kind of worries me a little bit at our vineyard because, you know, we tend to have be about a week longer of hang time. So we were really relying on at that point with a late fruit or a late bud break, we're relying on things to catch up. And clearly they did. We had this amazing weather. It was warm and kind of consistently warm, I thought, but then we tended to get these kind of cooler nights, these really nice cooling nights that kept things, I think, on track. We were a little dry, so we had not a lot of rain during the 18 year. We have actually irrigation in our vineyard, which I really enjoyed that year for a couple episodes. And then we got to hang it for a long time. As Rich was saying, we had the kind of luxury to pick when we wanted to, when they were ripe, and not having any kind of weather decisions in that mix. So it was really kind of really beautiful. And the wines just are showing, you know, amazingly right off the get-go. It's one of those things when the wines smell so good and taste so good right in the fermenter, always makes me a little worried, like, oh my gosh, it's like, how can they be this far forward, and what it's going to be in like 2 years. But, you know, 18's got acid, it's got some brightness, it's got some life, it's got this whole thing, this whole package. So that instant stuff that was there, that kind of remind me of 09, where it was just super far forward right away. But it's certainly got more life than I think what 9 had with the vibrancy that's there. So yeah, I'm super stoked about this vintage.
That's awesome. Thanks, Scott. Tony is partly responsible for me being in the Oregon wine industry, so thank you, Tony. Back in the day.
I'll send that photo back to you, Rob. So yeah.
From 20 odd years ago. Yes.
You've all changed.
So you've seen plenty of vintages and plenty of different sites you've worked with too. So, you know, was 18 really different site by site, or you know, soil type by soil type?
Yeah, well, kind of echoing what the other folks had just talked about. I mean, it was definitely a year where we had, you know, ample ripeness. I mean, the growing season was pretty kind to us. You know, kind of looking back over the last probably, you know, 2 decades, if you will, things have been getting, you know, warmer and earlier and kind of riper. And so 18 was kind of in line with that. Looking at the 2 vintages just prior to 18, you know, 2016 was, for me at least, the earliest on record as far as picking grapes and things getting ripe. So it was a very warm growing season. And then 17 was a little bit more irregular. We had some heat spikes, kind of dips and you know, peaks and valleys, if you will, in the growing season. 18 was, you know, I'd say much more moderate. And to echo the other comments, I think really had wonderful balance and nice acidity. And, you know, the wines just are very well proportioned. Robbie?
We lost Rob.
We may have lost Rob. Who else wants to comment on 2018?
Shane, you're the last one.
I think we should.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was like one of the easiest harvests I've ever had. It was top 3 easiest ones for me over the 21s that I've lived now. It was just like bring it in, and there was plenty of acid. Tasted great, super easy. I actually had a winemaker from Yarden in Israel living with me that harvest and making wine with me. I'd worked with him in 2010. So it just was really fun harvest for me too. It was like having a consultant live with me that was one of my best friends. So yeah, nothing but good memories. You're back, Rob. You're on mute though.
You're muted.
You're still muted, Rob.
This is professional stuff here, man.
There you go.
It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without me dropping out or hitting mute and not undoing it. So.
First glitch, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm a good example. So I was saying that it dropped out right when Tony was talking. So no offense, but you know, that was sort of fortuitous, or divine intervention, I think is the name of your lot.
Yeah. Solar flare. That's what it was.
So it sounds like we've established a fantastic vintage for this auction lot. So let's dig into the individual wines and really talk about the lots. So Rich, you've got lot number 87, which is a 20 case lot, which is awesome. We've got some wine to share, some fun to be had with 20 cases. And I'm assuming it has something to do with the Coeur clone by the name.
Yes, so here's our auction lot right here. Yes, I've personally have a fascination with Charles Coeur. Well, first of all, I love the clone and love the wine that comes out of that vineyard. Tony's familiar with the vineyard. He works out the same vineyard, so I don't know if he's worked with that clone, but for me, there's something very romantic and mysterious about the Coeur clone. Charles Coeur was actually 1965. He was the first person to come up here and plant grapes at what is now David Hill Winery, and he's basically the father of Pinot up here. Even though David Lett gets the credit for that, Charles Coeur actually did it first. He's a very help me somebody. He was an
enigmatic.
Thank you. Character. So he did a lot of work on cool climate research, on cool climate varietals, and kind of how growing Pinot in fringe climates optimizes the true potential of the grape. But back then, that's commonly held now as far as fringe climate winemaking, but back then it was not an accepted theory. So he had a lot to do really with being one of the pioneers of Oregon. And then the whole Coeur clone, there's a lot of mystery about it anyways, because it was one of those quote unquote suitcase clones. So you read, there's a bunch of different origin stories, but at some point he brought some cuttings over from France and planted them at now William Hill. There's also there's some wonderful plantings at Highland. There's other little blocks here and there I've worked with, but you look back on the lineage and they still, there's theories about what the mother plant is, what the mother clone is, but it's still shrouded in mystery. They're not 100% sure. And even from Coeur clone to vineyard, there's still a lot of mystery. So for me, it just kind of speaks about the romance and kind of the pioneering spirit of what is up here. And it's still such a young industry. We're only 55 years into it, and there's a lot of characters like this. A guy who kind of was a little bit of a loose cannon, and who kind of definitely went to the beat of his own drummer, but he made a significant difference up here, and people don't really have much of a recognition of him for that. He often gets lost in the conversation.
I think the color of some of these characters are really wonderful, and they kind of enrich the wine and the story. And I'm sure we have a few of those characters on this webinar right now that will play out in history. But Rich, do you want to talk a little bit about the flavor profile and the wine?
Oh, absolutely. Like we talked about 2018. So for me, it's very, just opulent. That's, sometimes it's an overused term, but for me, that comes to the forefront. It's just an opulent wine, very black fruit driven. But also it's got that acid, what we were talking about earlier, it's got the acid in there. So there's, even though it's a well extracted wine, there still is that crisp acid, the brightness in it. So, and for ageability too. So for me, it's really kind of, blackberry, black cherry, a little currant, but with a freshness in it too. Like we were talking about earlier, there's a freshness in these wines that often you don't find in warmer vintages, like a 15 or a 16. So I just say, opulence, and it's just a beautiful wine. It's, for me, there's a lot of delicacy, opulence, and just a lot of depth that I like about it. So
that's great. Thank you. That's awesome. Scott, let's shift over to your lot, which is lot number 90. and from the McMinnville AVA. Tell us about the name and the wine and your property.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the vineyard right now, so I apologize for any rural internet issues I have. So my wife and I, 22 years ago, decided that we wanted to grow Pinot Noir with Oregon. I grew up on a farm in Minnesota. Rich and I were just talking about our shared Midwest roots before this. So grew up on a farm, and really that's kind of was in my nature. I wanted to get back to farming. So 22 years ago, we picked up stakes, bought a place in what's now the McMinnville AVA, 50 acres, and started planting. And we planted our first block to kind of a multi-clonal selection, I think showing how little I knew about what I was doing. I was like, well, I'll plant 9 different clones of Pinot, and in a couple of years it'll tell me what's the best, and we'll plant the rest of the vineyard to that. We're starting to learn, maybe 22 years in, what's working really great on that. So this whole idea of using that as the test block was maybe not the best idea. But what it kind of, I guess, tangentially showed us was that having a multi-clonal selection was a pretty important thing, because on our property we have a lot of different soils. We have volcanic, sedimentary, lots of angles, lots of elevation changes. And what that lent us to believe was we wanted to start planting these multi-clonal selection plantings on all of our blocks, so that when you tasted our different blocks, you weren't tasting a clone per se, you were tasting a place, and kind of getting back to that whole time and place notion of how we try to make our wines and what I think Oregon's all about. So this particular block is actually a Massal selection from vines that I learned how to graft my own vines early on. So every block except our first block was grafted in our own nursery down at the bottom of the hill, off of plants that we liked from the initial planting. So we took those plants, propagated them throughout the rest of the vineyard in kind of a selection Massal method. And so some of our blocks look a little kind of funny because we have many clones in these blocks, and they're growing at a little bit different rates. But what I think it does is it creates that diversity of each one of these blocks. What our block is called for the auction, and by the way, I appreciate everybody's support of the Willamette Valley and the auction, and under these circumstances and this kind of new normal of what we're doing here. This is very important to WDWA. WDWA is a great organization. So thank you all for supporting us. So the block that I've got is called the Fleur de la Coeur. And the whole idea of that was when the 2 blocks that go into this are named after my 2 daughters. One of them is Abby, one of them is Tallulah. And it's a blend of those 2 blocks. And we typically we don't ever blend those blocks together, but the whole idea is to create something special, unique. What I love about these 2 different blocks is they have a personality. Each one of them has a personality that is very representative of my daughters as their names. So Tallulah's block, my youngest, Tallulah's this girl, she walks into a room, happy, bright, spirited, knows everybody, comes in and just instantly is bright and in your face, and everybody loves her. And that's the way Tallulah's always represents itself. Block has always got this bright cherry, lift, high, everybody loves it right away. Abby's block, on the other hand, is the block that takes a little bit of time typically in bottle to resolve and to show itself. But as it matures and as you get to know it, you start seeing the depth of this wine. And my daughter Abby, she's much quieter than my second. But as you get to know her, it's pretty amazing how the depth and layers that she has. We're pretty excited. She's off to Cal Poly doing computer science. But she's also an amazing artist and Beatles aficionado and all sorts of great musician, really cool stuff. So the whole idea of what I'm trying to do with this wine is to capture the spirit of what I think my daughters are, capture the spirit of that vineyard, bring together in this wine that represents something unique about our place. So that's what I've done. The last piece of it was the reason it's Fleur de la Coeur. That's, you guys, Harry Potter. That's a character supposed to be the most beautiful girl in the Harry Potter series. And I've read both that series to my daughters. We read them out loud to each other for many or every book. So that was a kind of special connection to the girls the place in the wines. So what this wine gives me is, I think, a little bit of what Rich was saying. We got this big opulence to the wine. McMinnville AVA, we tend to get pretty dark profiled wines anyway, even in cooler vintages, and then in a warmer vintage like this that really expresses itself. So we're definitely getting those dark black fruit tones, almost blue fruit tone, which reminds me a little bit more of one of our other blocks, or Nels block, but that's definitely coming through in this wine as well. But I get that lift of the Tallulahs, that brightness, that instant gratification kind of thing from it, and then that depth that I can see that's going to build over time. I'm super excited about this wine for years and years to come. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And thanks for listening to my story. Hopefully that came across on the internet.
Yeah, I think that works pretty well, Scott. We could hear you mostly all the way through, and I think it's, this business and what we're doing is personal. So I love the family ties in there. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Rural internet.
Now, I had this dead silence when I was done, and I'm like, oh my God, it was like the worst response ever. I had just deadness.
No, it was great. Thank you, Scott. That was a good, good overview. So, and I'll take a minute real quick just to also reiterate what Scott said about the benefit of the Willamette Valley Wineries Association and what they've done. Typically you think of things like Oregon Pinot Camp for the trade, or events out in the marketplace. With this situation this year, we're not doing those. But what WVWA has done for us as an industry is phenomenal in terms of helping us through reopening tasting rooms in a COVID time, how to manage harvest during COVID times, how to help national sales managers deal with the situation today. So it is a huge benefit to all of us in the business, and we appreciate enjoying the pleasure of these incredible wines these guys have crafted. So with that, I'm going to stop my commercial and hand it over to Tony to talk about a pretty unique lot that he has put together, which is a 5-case lot number 91, and it is white Pinot Noir. So take it away, Tony.
Sounds good. Okay, turn our missalettes to page 91. Very nice. Look at that. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks again for everyone who's kind of tuning in to this and supporting our organization. It's much appreciated. So getting onto the wine, thinking about it, making Pinot Noir for the last, let's say, long period of time. It's been kind of a fascinating journey, and one of the things that I really appreciate about the grape variety is the diversity and kind of the range of flavor profiles that we see kind of each and every year as winemakers and as wineries. And to me, it's one of the most fascinating things about the grapes. So with that said, one of the things that I would postulate that's almost always the same with regards to Pinot Noir is that it's a red wine. Well, today we took out the color, so look at that. So this is a white Pinot Noir, and I've had the the privilege of being able to make this style of wine. I was actually introduced to this about 15 years ago as a type of wine by a visiting winemaker from Italy. It's part of the reason that I chose the name Divine Intervention. It was just kind of one of those kismet moments, and it was really just kind of meant to be. And this was a pretty interesting fellow, pretty opinionated, as winemakers often are. And he was sharing with me a style of Pinot Noir that he made, which was from mature Pinot Noir grapes. And instead of making it as a sparkling wine, which we've all experienced, Pinot Noir as a white wine, as sparkling wine, but he was describing it as still wine. And to me, that whole idea just kind of, it flipped a switch in my brain. And I was very intrigued to actually pursue a wine like that. So this was in 2004. I was working at a winery. I'll think of the name in a moment. it was one of those things where I had the opportunity to craft a wine, and it was successful. And so that was really where things started with me with regards to white Pinot Noir. So fast forward now to today with my winery. I started Tendril back in 2008. We're a very small winery, and the main focus of our brand is about really showcasing the diversity of Pinot Noir. So to me, it seems even more appropriate today than when we started 12 years ago. And that range, I guess, with regards to the flavor profiles and textures that Pinot Noir really has inherently as a grape varietal is something that we wanted to capture in our brand. So the white Pinot Noir is in our lineup. It's always a wine that is highly talked about when people come and taste at our tasting room. And it's one that oftentimes, I mean, I would say almost without fail, people have a tendency to bring home with them because it's an experiential wine. And rarely have I found that in today's world, there's really not much in the wine world that hasn't been done or that people don't really know about. And this is actually an example of something that is a bit unusual, and it's kind of a find. So this white Pinot Noir in particular is once again from the 2018 vintage. This is also my privilege to be able to present the first white Pinot Noir for this auction. And this is coming from, I actually got it wrong a little bit in the details here, so I apologize for that. But this is coming primarily from the Clay Court Vineyard, which is in the Chehalem Mountains appellation. So really wonderful site. It's one of the estate vineyards of Elk Cove that we've been working with fruit off of a couple of their vineyards for the last 12 years. And there's also a tiny little bit of fruit coming from my own property, which is the Maverick Vineyard, which is in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. And so that's the little bit of Mount Eden that shows up in this. And the cool thing about this wine, whenever I smell white Pinot Noir, is I kind of have this picture that drops into my brain, which is of a soft serve ice cream cone. So when you have the chocolate and the vanilla kind of swirl together, when you smell white Pinot Noir, it's kind of that swirl, if you will, of red and white fruit characteristics. And it's one of the cool things about Pinot Noir that I think as winemakers we see every year. Early when we're crushing the grapes, you can see the white wine characteristics of Pinot Noir, and then after the skin contact, obviously it turns squarely into the red camp. But it's a really fun wine. It has a lot of complexity to it. It's a very serious style of Pinot Noir, but it's one that is very approachable and incredibly versatile at the dinner table. So if you have that couple that one likes red and one likes white, or one is going to eat red meat and one's going to have seafood, this is a great bridge wine. So cheers.
Thanks, Tony. I love the analogy of the ice cream swirl. So that's pretty good. Rich, Shane, Scott, have you guys all tasted white Pinot Noir? Raise your hand. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Here, I'll give it
Yeah.
to you now. Here.
With Tony, no
Not
less.
this one, but
Yeah. And have
Got a
any of
few
you guys
Tony
made
in
white
myself.
Pinot?
What's
Have you
up?
guys made white Pinot before?
Have not.
Kind of in a different iteration and a different time, but no, not like Tony has. So.
yeah, not similar to what Tony does.
That's really cool. That's good. It's awesome. I like the discovery and exploration. That's really great. Thanks, Tony. Shane, you are lot number 92, Zena
Yeah.
Crown, and you've got 5 case lot of Pinot, and I love the name. And Tony was like, is it ampersand, 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 or is it ampersand and ampersand?
Ampersand and ampersand.
There you go.
So yeah, Shane here, Zena Crown Wines. The vineyard is down in the old Amity Hills, kind of, I call it in the pocket of Rad. It's right next to Bethel Heights, Christome, Temperance Hill right here, Zenith Vineyard right below us. So some pretty great neighbors and a pretty rad spot. A little bit of a more open side of the EO Amity AVA, and definitely very cool during the summer. 4:30 in the afternoon every day. It gets pretty windy down there, and I live in McMinnville, and let's say this afternoon it's going to be 80 degrees in McMinnville at 5 o'clock. The Zena Crown Vineyard will probably be down to 70 with a 15-mile-an-hour sustained wind. So it's a pretty interesting place. A little bit longer hang time down there, but we still ended up picking this around the third week of September. I like to pick a little bit early. pretty awesome being on this panel with all of you guys, but particularly Tony, since him and I worked on Zena Crown together for the first 5 years. So it's kind of fun.
It was a privilege, Shane. It was a privilege.
It was fun. Yeah. So yeah, this one particularly a little bit about the wine. You know, every once in a while you find a barrel in particular that's just like, oh, that's the rock and barrel. And I find most of those are in second fills. And most of the time it's probably just a haphazard blend that we always barrel down all of our lots by block. So say that this one's mostly block 1A off the west side of the vineyard. But, you know, there's never exactly 5 or 6 barrels of a block. There's going to be like 4.5. And so you've got 2/3 of a barrel of the next lot that you're normally barreling down. And sometimes those blends work really well. And, you know, we're always thinking about what are you going to do for the auction this year? What kind of special wine you're going to make? And I was tasting through all these barrels, and this one barrel was just rocking. The haphazard intern blend ended up being really, really good. So we had to put it in barrel, bottle. I mean, mostly because it's like, oh, this wine needs to exist. And the ampersand name happened just because I think it's hilarious. I've been wanting to call something ampersand for years, and finally someone let me do it. So, you know, it's a play on the faddishness of taste. I found, you know, it very silly 5 or 6 years ago or 10 years ago when everything was something ampersand and something else. And most of the time it made absolutely no sense to me. So I thought I would take it one step further and ampersand. So.
Thank you so much, Shane. Rob, are you back?
I am back. Yes. Just to hear the ampersand and ampersand. So that's great.
So good.
So Rob, were you on a little SpaceX mission? Is that going on here? You back now?
Yes, I'm back now. I just had to, you know, reconnect to the satellites. So yeah.
Boldly go where no one's gone before. Yeah,
that's right. Yep. I love the fun we have and the camaraderie as an industry, and it's great, you know, how so many paths have crossed too, in working and sharing and helping each other. Scott and I were bus camp counselor a number of years ago, as I think it was Gilligan's Island we were that year. So
yeah, you were Gilligan, as I recall. I think I was the skipper.
You were.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think you were Thurston Howell the third or fourth.
That's it.
Who was the skipper?
Howell the
Who was
third.
the skipper?
Love it. I remember skipper. I'm glad I was the skipper.
Yes. So I appreciate you guys touching on the wines and the auction lots. I think, you know, you've all crafted very specific, unique wines. And it's going to be interesting to see how the live close goes. So that's next Thursday at noon Pacific Standard Time. Fritz will kind of kick that off. So tune into that for sure. Do you guys want to touch a bit more about any particular winemaking topics or things that are maybe that you used in 18, or things that are maybe more personal to you that happened in 18 that are significant? I mean, we can all think of 2020 and what we've seen this year, both personally and from winemaking, but let's cast back to 18 and take that on. Rich, anything in 2018 you want to touch on personally or from a winemaking style that you want to dig into?
Well, personally, man, the years start blending together after a while, to be honest with you. So I gotta have to bring myself back. I don't know, winemaking, it's just for me, it was just a big deal for me with Oregon winemaking, especially how this vineyard is extraction and learning the art of, you know, your cap management and when to, you know, when to back off on your punch downs, when to not do any punch downs, you know, kind of fine tuning. We've been working for a while for this vineyard. So I feel, you know, this was like our 3rd or 4th year, and I felt 18, we were really kind of fine tuned. It's a very tannic site. And if you're not careful, it can get out of hand on you. So I think for me, it was just an education on this vineyard, because we actually did our auction lot 16 from it. So this is kind of part 2 of that. And it was just learning, the more I'm up here, I just learn that oftentimes a lighter touch is your best bet. And it's just, you need to know when to put your foot on the accelerator and take your foot off the accelerator. So as far as 2018, I just kind of continue my summer activities. I golf, I fish. 2018, let's see, that's the year that my oldest boy started. No, actually, he was already 1 year into college. So I've got 21 and 19-year-old kids. So, 2018 was just it was just another great Oregon year. And living, I look back at 2018, I've just got good memories. And as far as specific things that jump out at me, I'm sorry, but things just run together for me after the year. So I just remember it didn't rain. We didn't have to deal with any of that crap. Everything got ripe. Everything tasted nice. There weren't any accidents. Yeah. But as far as, why I living up here is, I grew up in the Midwest. I got my degree, University of Iowa, English degree. I wanted to be a writer. So I just came out west, kind of chasing the romantic dream. I stumbled into, I lived in California, stumbled in the wine industry there, started at the bottom. But I came up here in 2006. And in this, they call it God's country up here. A lot of people do, and it is. I'm never going to leave. And so I have to show, I've got my fishing pictures here because I can't help it. So here's this is like what we'd be doing in 2018. And that's a sturgeon. So when I'm not here, that's one of the things I do. I'd be out here doing this, golfing, completely soaked. I got the double rainbow going. Cruising around in my 72 Ranchero. So that's often a summer activity for dragging the gut. So I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is, as much as I love making wine up here, and here's a picture of our cluster, a nice, beautiful picture of the cluster from the vineyard.
Oh my God, that's got to be like a 4-pound cluster, Rich.
I know. Yeah, this was actually, I think this was actually out of block 10, to be honest with you. I don't think.
Yeah, no, that is. I can tell.
I knew you could tell.
It's got that organic.
I knew if anybody would know. Yeah. But you're like a Jedi, so that's
there's a little Corey tag on there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I
love the screen shares too, Rich. Those are great. We don't have to do anything. You just hold up your picture. That's awesome.
But that kind of gives you an idea. So yes, I love making wine up here. I love being in the industry up here, but it's the lifestyle that I love up here why I'm not going to leave. Because I can do stuff like this an hour, that's like 2 hours away. I go in any direction, there's stuff to do. I've got sons, I get out, 21, 19-year-old boys. We have adventures. So you can have adventures here. And there's still the spirit of camaraderie. Like we all, we're having a good time right now. We're just chatting.
Exactly.
And so, I kind of jumped off topic a little, but for me, there's just a lot of romance in this area that I just love it here. And I think that's what we all are expressing in our own separate ways, is our love for this area and the magic up here and how
Let me take your first comment about tannins and maybe throw that to Shane or Scott on tannin management in 18. And was that an issue you had to address, or how did that play out? Shane, you want to start, and then maybe Scott?
I think Scott should, because I know that you guys, the McMinnville AVA, man, tannins is a big deal for you guys.
Yeah, the Prince of Darkness stuff here for sure. Yeah, so it's interesting when I heard Rich talking about that. Like every year, I get a little more, I guess, brave enough not to do as much in the fact of being less and having that confidence in being less is more. And I totally agree. We on the front end really went up. I that hunted down, going like crazy. It was completely undrinkable when I was done. It was so fancy, such a beast. And ever since then, we've continually softened our approach, and more and more, we are becoming a lighter and lighter touch. So it's important in Minville especially to be very, very light-handed. And in 18, the tannins were there. Everything was there. We didn't really have to go at it very much, and it showed right away. So I completely emphasize what we're trying to say on the tannin management.
Between Scott's internet and mine, we've got all kinds of good underwater conversations going on. So
It sounds like the teacher and Charlie Brown a little.
right?
Yeah.
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 Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Scott, I wonder if
So
you move
my
inside.
answer is I agree with Rick. How's that?
Right. Yeah, that's good. And Tony, you want to touch on the tannin side of things? I mean, with
Maybe.
white
I will
Pinot,
try that.
with white Pinot, do you have different issues there, or?
Oh yeah, there's no question. I mean, tannin management is pervasive throughout. You know, we in our program for Tendril and for our client wines, including open claim that's the vineyard that Rich was referring to. I mean, yeah, tannins are definitely something to be managed. You know, probably over the last 10 years or so, whole cluster fermentation has really become an increasing technique that we're embracing in our cellar. And the nice thing about it is it's a way to kind of slow down the fermentation a little bit and actually drop the fermentation temperature. You know, our winery is pretty bare bones, I guess, with regards to what we've got as far as cooling capabilities and all that good stuff. So actually having the fermenters just sort of naturally approach things at a slower pace is actually a great way to accomplish that. And then really what we're doing from a cap management standpoint, I mean, I bet you over the last 5 years, you know, probably somewhere between a third and half of the fermentations we've done, you know, an incredibly low number of punch downs and cap management. So being adaptive with regards to what the growing season is and what Mother Nature is giving us, I think is really, really important. And I think it's becoming one of the most important aspects to making wine here in the Willamette Valley, as you know, our growing conditions continue to get warmer and drier and hotter.
Thanks, Tony. That's awesome. Shane, you want
to? My whole philosophy around tannins is just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And
yep, that's brilliant.
That's it.
Sounds like a philosophy of life, not just tannins.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Yes,
it goes for a lot of things.
Yeah. That's great. I haven't been keeping up with the questions, but it looks like Julie, you've been addressing some of the questions out there.
Yeah, we just had one about how Shane's lot name was spelled, so I just answered that one quickly. But after Tony's waxing poetic about his white Pinot with various foods, I kind of want to hear everybody's perfect pairing with their auction wine.
Sounds good. Scott, why don't you start, since you're indoors now? Maybe we can get a little better connection.
Hopefully this is better. So you know, I love our wines because of that blue fruit. I remember one time Brian and Jill O'Donnell came over for dinner, and I made this pork with a blueberry chutney, kind of a pork roulade with a blueberry chutney. And because of the spice and that dark kind of blue fruit that's in our wine, and pork, of course, in Pinot is amazing. It just reminds me of that. And that had to be 15 years ago, I bet. But it just reminds me of that dinner and actually how good of friends those folks are. So that's what I would recommend.
It's lunchtime. I'm hungry. Shane, you have a pairing for all the ampersands?
Yeah, you know, it just depends on the time of the year and what I want to drink. But, you know, I'm wearing my IPNC salmon take shirt right now. Honestly, this wine would be pretty rocking with salmon on a steak, that's for sure. Or salmon anyway, in an air fryer. Easy. Drink your half bottle of wine while it's waiting, while you're cooking it.
Love it. Love it. Tony, what about you?
Yeah, well, the cool thing about white Pinot Noirs is that, you know, it's kind of, like I said, this wine that is incredibly versatile. So you can pair it up with foods that are traditional white wine fare or foods that are traditionally enjoyed with red wine. And I would agree with Shane. It's definitely seasonal as to what I enjoy. In our family here, we love sushi. So it's actually white Pinot Noir is like kind of a slam dunk this time of year. Put a little chill on it and just kind of have at it. And, as the temperature gets a little cooler and the days are shorter here, some, I love like with a seared duck breast, where that's kind of cooked medium rare. This is like a perfect foil to it, where it really kind of, works through the fattiness of the meat and just it has the acidity and the freshness. So.
Sounds good. Sushi. I had some last night. I wish I had some white Pinot to go with that.
Yeah, I bet you weren't going to Shun though, were you?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately. I'm a long way from Shun, but I'll be home on Sunday, so I'm looking forward to it. Rich, what's your perfect pairing?
I kind of echo what Scott was saying about the pork. For me, it'd be Carlton Farms bone-in pork chops on the Traeger. So Carlton Farms is a wonderful place up here that just supplies wonderful meat, and it's all locally sourced, locally raised. So that's my pairing. Yeah, I just agree with the pork fat and that nice long smoking. It would be a great interplay with this wine. So.
Yep, I love my Carlton Farms bacon, pork
Oh,
chops,
yeah.
you name it. It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, good people too. So, yeah, it's nice. We are very fortunate in Oregon with seasonal foods and mushrooms and seafood and etc. that we can really find incredible pairings with these Pinots and white wines out here. So. I'm sure back home, wherever you are, there's great pairings for these wines too, because not only obviously is the white Pinot pretty versatile, our red Pinot is quite versatile too. So that's great. Anything that is really exciting you guys want to talk about? Anything that's like really you're busting to bring up in the last couple of minutes of the chat relative to the auction and the wine and your life?
I just appreciate the both charities that it's going to, of course, the WVWA, but the James Beard thing with the indigenous and black owned businesses. Right on. Great time in the history of the world to do this sort of thing, and I hope that we can do stuff like this going forward as well.
Yeah, I would echo that. And as an industry, we've done have a task force focusing on broadening our diversity in a lot of ways. So I think it's great, and I appreciate the efforts of the WVWA in that area too. I think it's a great what the Beard Foundation has done through the COVID times, and now this is going to be an ongoing investment. So it's really great to see.
Yeah, I think this is going to dovetail into it. We're going to do a whole philanthropy arm at WVWA. So this is really just the start of hopefully much bigger things for WVWA from a philanthropic and community outreach perspective. Not much.
Yeah, and I'll add too. Obviously, it's a challenging time for a lot of the restaurateurs across the country, and retail too. As we're all challenged this year to kind of redefine our business and rebuild our business in a newer, better way for the future. So, our thoughts are going out to all our trade partners out there, distributors, and restaurateurs and retailers. So, thanks for the support, and you can count on us to support you guys in return as well. So. Anything else, Julia? Anybody want to close on?
I actually have a question for everybody. This is such a cool group of winemakers, very different personalities, styles, parts of the valley. We always talk about Pinot as being so expressive of sight. It's what we love about it. What about your wine is most expressive of you? Whether it's your personality, your philosophy, how does your wine, you can speak about this wine specifically or your wines in general, but where do you see you the most in your wine?
Who starts? I'll start. So I see the fact that our wines come from our place where we've planted them, that we live, and that, that we try to make this a better place. And to me, that's really it. It's a representation of the fact that it comes from the place I live, and we planted every vine, and we have just this great opportunity to be here. It's pretty amazing that 22 years ago we stumbled into this amazing place that I will hopefully be here for forever. So yeah, and that's how I think our wines represent our place.
And yeah. So for me, I just I think that one of the most critical things about great wine is balance, and so it's a matter of sort of capturing the individuality of site, but also of the vintage. And so I just think that the way I relate to wine, it's more on a very sensorial level. So to me, it's kind of the tying with food. It's not just an association; it's an integral part of it. So I think about wine from the I guess mindset of a cook, and so to me that's what it's all about. So it's just being able to capture that and really provide great flavor memories for folks. Mm-hmm. And lastly is PSA. Mask up, everybody. Let's beat this thing. Seriously, we need to get off life support and let's get back at it. Let's everyone be smart and safe.
That's important.
Thanks, Tony.
Shane,
you want to?
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah. I think I always harp on this, but you can't take yourself out of terroir. Of course, terroir is a four-letter word in a lot of winemaking culture, but I feel you just can't. You can't. You're a part of what you do, no matter what. And yeah, I think a lot of your wineries and people's personalities come through in the wine. I always want our wines to be expressive and fun and not just, I always think about them as more like that friend that you want to just have around, and maybe just pops over and comes down and sits on your couch and like doesn't even talk to you. It's like, I like those friends. Those are good friends. Yeah. I'm not really into those friends that, just come over and just want to yell or talk at you or it's just too much work. And that's what I think about our wines. Like, I don't want them to be too much work. I want them to be fun and enjoyable. So.
For me, I mean, winemaking is just.
Shane.
Oh,
go ahead, Rich.
I mean, it's just part of my life now. This is going to be. After a while, like I bet you, Tony couldn't even tell you how many vintages he's worked because he just forget after a while. It's not important anymore. But I think this is going to be like my 28th. And for me, I've always been, like I said, I'm a romantic. Even though people who meet me wouldn't think so, I am a romanticist at heart. And I've always been attracted to the ancient. We're doing something that is ancient, and it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And fundamentally, yeah, we've had improvements and such, but it hasn't changed that much in 5,000 years. And I'm really into the idea of viewing it as a craft and, coming up through the years. And, it's not an easy industry to be in. There's a lot of glamour. This is a glamorous side. This is a great, and this is the part I love. But I also love the hard work, getting your hands stained to the point that they're cracking every night. You go home, looking at your teeth at the end of the day, your lips are cracking, your mouth is cracking. You're just beat up, and by the end of a harvest, it becomes, there's such a huge amount of camaraderie, and it's all like we're in it together, And so for me, it's more than just a job. It's a lifestyle because you have to be committed to be a winemaker. You have to make that commitment. There's a lot of sacrifices, but there's great rewards. So I just like the whole, like I said, the ancient of it and the whole kind of the magic of it. For me, it's alchemy. There's a lot of science, but there's also, there's the art to it too. And that's why it's such a cool industry, because you can have both in there. It's a marriage of both. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, most of my job is crunching numbers, being hardcore, I got to get stuff done. That's the guy I am. I get stuff done. I get to make sure it's right. But at the end of the day, I still have that that side of romance that I can turn to. So that's what I love about it.
Well, to quote High School Musical, Rich, we're all in this together.
Absolutely, man. No, it's true though. I mean, I've got a family, and the COVID thing's really important. Back in Iowa, I've got a stepbrother who's on a ventilator right now for the last month, and he was the most wonderful guy you're ever going to meet. He was the kindest, warmest, most unselfish person you're ever going to meet. And unfortunately, he wasn't careful, and so it's real. And I hate to be it in a somber tone, but I agree with Tony. We're all in it together. It's going to take a lot of work, and we'll get through it. And
we will get through it.
We will. So,
yeah,
but
we got to appreciate every day and what we're doing.
But the end of my spiel is, I just want to talk about how, you know, the Willamette Valley Winery Association is a first-class operation. So anybody who has ever not been to the wine auction, it is an absolute first-class event at an absolute first-class facility done the right way. So I'm honored to be with this. And what I like about it, I work for a big winery, but the Willamette Valley Winery Association spends time with the big wineries. They spend time with the little wineries. They're in everybody's interest. So it's a worthy cause, absolutely to donate to. And then with the added, James Beard Foundation this year, it's a wonderful organization doing the right thing, and it needs to be supported.
Well said, Rich. Well said.
Agree.
Well said indeed. That's great, Rich. And it's great to see so many trade partners dialing in and watching the seminar too. I'm honored to be all your friends and co-workers, and it's a really fun time to kind of talk today. So don't forget, lot 87 got lot 90 Coeur de Terre, lot 91 Tendril, and 92 Zena Crown. Hope you enjoyed our fun today. Julia, you can take us home.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thank you so much, panelists. You've been so wonderful. Thank you, attendees, for joining us today. Hope we were able to bring a little bit of the Willamette Valley to you. I think, with pictures of sturgeon and all the talk about local food, I think we did bring a very Oregon seminar today. If I dropped a couple links in the chat once again for learning more about the auction. If you're trade and you haven't yet registered to bid, that link is also in the chat. Hope you'll join us next week, August 11th, 12th, and 13th, with a live close on the afternoon of August 13th. Thanks, everyone, and cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.